G70CMM. What does that mean? Well, if you want to know, stay tuned, because in this video, I'm going to talk about what to look for when you're trying to find the right fishing rod. What is up, everybody? My name is Jay. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, take a moment, subscribe to this channel so that way you can see when the next videos are going to be dropping. Like I said earlier, in today's video, we're just going to go over some things so that you know how to better pick the right fishing rod for you. So, the main tips that we're going to go over are going to be like the power of the rod, the length of the rod. That actually is going to be the first one. So first things we're going to go over is the length of the rod, the power of your rod, and then we're also going to go over the action of your rod tip. If you stay tuned till later, I also got some awesome tips for you that are going to go over the guides, which are these round things right here on your actual rod. So stay tuned and let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about the length of your rod. So when you're walking to the store and you just wonder how long of a rod you should have, pretty much think about the situation that you're going to be fishing, kind of thing. The way that I've read and I've done the research, anything that's under 7 foot, bear with me with the wind, guys, I know it's strong right now, but any rod that you're going to get that's under 7 foot are going to be more for like accurate casting or like tight spots. So like if you're trying to cast specific places, like on a brush pile or on a dock, or like under a dock rather, or if you're on the bank and you're covered and you have like trees and stuff all around you, shorter rods are going to be your go-to option on that one. Now, if that's not such an issue and you're dealing with like open water and you want more leverage, a longer rod, things that are going to be 7 foot and longer, are going to be where you ideally want to go to. The 7 foot options, like typically the go-to options are going to be somewhere right in the 7 foot range. 7 foot, 7'1", 7'2". There goes my camera trying to fall. That's funny. I hope it sees me still good. Pretty good, guys. Now I got to think about what I was saying again. Anyway, so we were talking about the regular typical go-to options. Typical go-to options are going to be right around the 7 foot area. My go-to is, this is a 7 foot. This one back here is a 7'3". Those are my those are the two that I typically take with me every time I go out. When you're dealing with a longer rod, you have more leverage when it comes to setting a hook, because you have more line that's out when you're swinging. So when you're setting, a longer rod is going to just have a one up on that. That's just the math there. Shorter rods though, like I said, they're good for when you want to have a tighter situation. So next up, what we have is the power of your rod. So the power of your rod is simply defined as basically the strength that your rod has, or what is it? It's the weight that it can handle before it actually flexes. You're gonna have somewhere between ultra light and extra heavy. It's something to pay attention to, because if you have too light of a power, it's going to have less accuracy and you're not going to get as much distance on those casts. But if you have too heavy of a rod power, it's just going to cause just less efficiency, and it actually causes a lot more backlash issues, which nobody likes that. So let's avoid that. Just pay attention to the power of your rod. A typical go-to rod power is going to be somewhere in the medium to medium heavy range. On my 7 foot rod here, it's a medium power. On my 7'3" back here, it's a medium heavy. They're just the go-to options. They tend to just work in multiple situations. They can handle multiple lures and things like that. Also, the power of your rod will determine the line that your rod can use, and it also can determines the lure weight that your rod can handle. So that's one of the main things you want to make sure you're paying attention to, or those are the main things you want to pay attention to when you're picking out the power of your rod. Next up, what we have is the action of your rod. Basically what that is defined as is where on your rod does it flex. Slower rod actions are going to be, they're going to flex more towards the end, towards the butt of the rod. Faster rod tips, well, let me just hit you there. Faster rod tips are literally going to be flexing right up here in the first few eyes of the rod. So what does that mean? Essentially, that's going to determine what kind of lures and stuff that you want on your rod. And the range is very similar to that of the rod power. You're going to have your extra fast tips all the way up to your extra slow tips or rods. And what that means is basically with the extra fast and the fast, even to some moderates, depending on your rod model, they're going to be more sensitive, and so therefore you're going to want those in a more finesse setting, or like a weightless Texas rig, or even jigs, depending, because you want a faster tip basically is more sensitive, and you want something, a more sensitive tip is when you have to feel it, more or less. When you want a slower action rod, that's something you want that's a little bit more forgiving, like a crankbait or top waters. Wait, no, I'm sorry, that's backwards. No, wait, that's right. Sorry, I had to pause there for a second. And if you haven't known yet, or if you don't know yet, I'm dyslexic, so I'll have a moment where I think something is backwards in my head, so I have to wait and pause and had to relook it up real quick. So yes, top waters, things like spinner baits, things that need those reaction bites, you tend to want a slower action rod. They're more forgiving, and the way I saw it on I looked up other videos, and it was with a faster action rod, you tend to be able to hook the set quick, kind of thing. With a slower action rod, which for example like a crankbait, you don't set the hook quick on those. You kind of lean into it. So it's slower actions, a slower hook set, faster actions, kind of got a faster hook set. Sensitivity makes all the difference in that. So it's another thing to pay attention to. Like I said, it ranges from extra fast all the way up to probably extra slow. With me, mine are right there in the middle. I like faster action tips typically. These both are moderate, and I just want to show y'all because this is just an example of what I'm talking about, because people are probably like, what do you mean where it flexes? Of course my line wants to be oh there we go. Okay, so a fast action rod is typically going to bend somewhere in the first 3 guides that are on here. Now that all depends on how many guides are all on here too, which we will get into towards the end of the video. I did not forget, those tips are still coming as well. But a faster tip is going to typically bend somewhere right here, second or third eye. A moderate one, let me see before it gets all caught up on itself, which it is. Come on now. It's oh, you're on camera, so let's just make it mess up. Alright, let's see if I can get this right. I know you bend it, you want to bend it more directly under. If you're going to test it, test and pull under. Now, on mine, we're about at the 6th eye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see there? That's a moderate. It's going to be towards not the center, but the upper center of the rod itself. Like I said, that all depends on the length of your rod too, how many guides you have. But faster ones are going to be towards the tip of the end where it's supposed to bend. Slower ones are going to be towards the butt. Those are the main things that you need to know when you're looking for the action of your rod. So I know you're probably sitting there and you're probably wondering, okay, so how do I know, where do I find all this information? And I forgot to mention it earlier in the video that I was going to go over this too. Remember that number that I read at the beginning and kind of was like, what is that? That, guys, is typically your stock number. And on this one, for example, by the way, guys, the rods that I'm using in this video are going to be made by Jinko Fishing. These are their Deceiver rods, their Gambler series. These things are awesome. Now, when you're checking your actions and your powers and the links and all that, well, the links better be the same because, you know, links are measured typically the same. But the actions and the powers, they may say they're one thing, but they may just be a little different depending on the name brand. So just keep that in mind as well. On most rods nowadays, you're going to find your stock number and you're going to find all that information that we went over somewhere right here at the butt of your rod. I hope y'all can see that. I don't know if it'll show or, you know, what you focus, but it's going to be somewhere right in here. And on mine, it says G70 CMM 7 foot 0 inches, medium moderate action. It also tells me the kind of line, which is 8 to 15 pound line that this rod can handle. And it also tells me the lure weight, which it says 1/4 to 1/2 ounce. So most of the information is right here on the rod itself. Now there are some stock numbers, or there are some rods that do their measuring not in foot and inches, and they just do it in, I think, all in inches, the whole thing, like not, it's like 85 inches or how, I don't know what 7 foot is, 80 inches, however tall 7 foot is, they put it in inches instead of saying 7 foot. But nonetheless, if you know your inches, you'll know what kind of foot you're dealing with too. So just remember, it's not that hard when you go in to look, especially if you know what you're looking at. So hopefully this video has helped. Now, if you stayed till now, we're going to go over the next details that I told you about, and those are going to be about the guides on your rod. So what are rod guides? Rod guides are basically these round little circular things that go down the whole length of your rod. It's what your line is threaded through. Typically these things are made out of plastic, metal, or some sort of ceramic material. Now, as a rule of thumb, you usually want at least one guide per foot of your rod. So if you have a 7 foot rod, you should at least have 7 guides. Now, it's also better to have more guides, because what the guide does is it takes off stress from the actual rod. Now imagine if you only had one guide at the end and one at the very tip. There's going to be so much stress on both those guides that it probably wouldn't even be efficient. Now, the more guides you have, each one takes on stress, so therefore it works. They take on less stress load, so it works as a team, and they're kind of fascinating. On this one here, I believe I have, let me see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guides on a 7 foot rod. That is fantastic. So, like I said, rule of thumb with the guides, guys, is you want to make sure that you have at least one per foot, if not more. Another thing to look for, and I know that this is, you know, something I looked it up. I forgot to actually write it in my notes, and I'm just thinking of it out of whim. There's some that you'll get that only have one singular leg. So like, don't imagine these 2 legs down here. Oh gosh, I hope that's focusing. So you see this one has, maybe if I bring it back, it has two legs down here. A lot of them, you'll see just the one leg. And those are fine. But when you have the extra support, it's pretty much like the same kind of factor. The extra support there helps with the stress of the actual rod, and it just makes it last longer. You want a good rod as well, or I mean a good guide that has good inserts that actually stick to the inside. If you get some cheaper models and things like that, the rubber part there's on the inside of these guides, and I don't think I could actually show y'all, maybe I can. On the inside, they're hard to see. There's a piece in there, and it's on these, they're so well in there that they're just like part of it, but it's like a rubber piece, and you want it to be well installed, because a lot of the times when you're fishing, those inserts will come out, and then you have your line rubbing on metal, and a lot of times that's going to break your line, and that could really make a bad day of fishing, especially if you hook into a big one. So you want guides that have good, I guess inserts. They're rubber inserts, I believe. Don't quote me on if they're rubber. I believe they're rubber, but you want good inserts. I do know that much. Alright guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope the next time you go out and get a fishing rod that some of these tips helped. Don't forget to check the length of your rod, the power of your rod, the action of your rod, And don't forget, guys, all that information is going to be right there somewhere on the side of that rod, typically. And remember to count your guides. But if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you wouldn't mind, dropping a comment. Let me know what you guys want to see more of. But you guys know how it goes, right? If we're out there fishing, we're out there catching donkeys or dinks, or we're learning how to get a new fishing rod. No complaints.